The stolen shuttle drifted silently through the Kuiper belt, its systems powered down to avoid detection. Inside, the fugitive Antimatter Marines huddled around a jury-rigged comm unit, faces illuminated by its soft glow. Major Sam Buff's jaw clenched as he watched the newsfeed scroll by. Rogue soldiers, dangerous fugitives, threat to galactic security. The accusations flew thick and fast, each one a knife to the heart of their mission. "They're painting us as traitors," Corporal Reyes spat, her fists clenching. "After everything we've sacrificed." Lieutenant Sato raised a hand, her eyes never leaving the data stream. "Wait, look at this. Underground channels are picking up our information. It's spreading faster than they can suppress it." A flicker of hope passed through the group, but it was short-lived. Stone's gruff voice cut through the moment. "We've got bigger problems. Look." He pointed to a priority alert flashing on the screen. The words "Manhunt Initiated" glowed ominously, followed by their names and faces. "They're throwing everything they have at us," McDermott whispered, the reality of their situation sinking in. Buff was about to respond when a hidden subroutine in their comm unit activated. A scratchy voice filled the cabin, layers of encryption making it almost unrecognizable. "Foxhound, this is Grey Wolf. Do you copy?" Buff's eyes widened. It was a code he hadn't heard in years, from a voice he thought he'd never hear again. "Copy, Grey Wolf. Situation. Bad, Foxhound. They're not just coming for you. They're watching your families. Pressure points. You know the drill." The temperature in the shuttle seemed to drop several degrees. Each team member's face paled as the implications sank in. "Understood, Grey Wolf. Options. Limited. You can't go in yourselves. Too hot. But I've still got some strings I can pull. Old guard off the books. We'll get them out." Buff looked at his team, saw the fear and determination warring in their eyes. They had known there would be consequences, but this was a new level of personal. "Do it," Buff said, his voice hard. "Whatever it takes. Copy that. I'll activate the network. You focus on staying alive and getting that information out. Grey Wolf, out." As the transmission cut off, a heavy silence fell over the shuttle. They had struck a blow for truth, but the cost was mounting by the second. Sato was the first to break the silence. I need to send a message to my sister. If they're going after families." "No direct contact," Buff said, hating the words even as he spoke them. "We can't risk it. We have to trust Grey Wolf and his network." "So what do we do now?" McDermott asked, his voice small in the vast quietness of space. Buff stood, looking at each member of his team, his family. "We do what Antimatter Marines do. We adapt, we overcome, and we complete the mission." He moved to the shuttle's viewport, staring out at the star-speckled void. "They think they can silence us by threatening what we love. They're wrong. It only proves how important this fight is." Turning back to his team, Buff's eyes blazed with determination. "We're going to ground, find secure locations to continue spreading the truth. And we're going to start reaching out to other enhanced soldiers. Show them there's a way out." "It's not going to be easy," Stone warned. "No," Buff agreed. "But nothing worth doing ever is. We're Antimatter Marines." Ex-Antimatter Marines, he corrected himself with a grim smile. "It's time to show them what that really means." As the team began to plan their next moves, the stolen shuttle continued its silent drift through the outer reaches of the solar system. They were fugitives, branded as traitors, separated from their loved ones. But they were also the bearers of a truth that could change everything. The real war, they realized, was just beginning. The team had scattered across 3 safe houses on a remote asteroid belt, maintaining minimal communication to avoid detection. In a cramped, dimly lit room, Major Buff hunched over a secure terminal, his face illuminated by the soft glow of the screen. "All right, Grey Wolf," he muttered, fingers flying over the keyboard. "Let's see what you've set in motion." Encrypted messages flashed across the screen, each one a piece of an intricate puzzle. Buff's eyes widened as he deciphered the plans. Grey Wolf had been busy, activating a network of retired operatives, underground contacts, and even a few sympathetic active duty personnel. A knock at the door made him tense. "It's me," came Rhea's voice. Buff relaxed, letting her in. "Any news?" she asked, the worry evident in her eyes. Buff knew she was thinking of her younger brother back on Earth. "It's happening now," he said, gesturing to the screen. "Operation Family Exodus is underway." On Earth, in a quiet suburb of New Atlanta, Sarah Reyes was preparing dinner when she noticed a flicker of movement outside her kitchen window. Her hand instinctively moved towards the emergency beacon her brother had given her years ago. Before she could activate it, there was a knock at the door. "Ma, delivery for you." Sarah hesitated, then approached the door cautiously. Through the peephole, she saw a nondescript delivery man holding a package. "I didn't order anything," she said through the door. "No, ma, I am, but your brother did. He said you'd know what to do when you saw the rabbit." Sarah's breath caught. It was a code phrase she and her brother had established years ago. She opened the door. The delivery man spoke quickly and quietly. "We have to move. Now, grab only what you can carry in one bag. 2 minutes." As Sarah rushed to pack, her mind raced. She had seen the news, knew her brother was now considered a fugitive, but she also knew him, knew he would never betray the principles he believed in. Within minutes, she was in a nondescript vehicle, heading towards an uncertain future. Similar scenes played out across Earth and its colonies. Buff's parents, retired military themselves, were extracted by old comrades under the guise of a surprise anniversary trip. Sato's sister vanished from her university campus during a fire drill. McDermott's extended family was quietly relocated from their farm, a gas leak providing cover for their sudden departure. Not all extractions went smoothly. Stone's ex-wife and daughter narrowly escaped a government raid, their safe house compromised mere hours after they left. Sato's parents had to be extracted directly from military custody, a daring operation that left 2 of Grey Wolf's operatives injured. Back on the asteroid, Buff received confirmation after confirmation. Families safe. Extraction complete. En route to secure locations. Relief washed over him, but it was tempered by the weight of what they had set in motion. These people, their loved ones, were now fugitives too, all because of the choices he and his team had made. "They're safe," he told Reyes, seeing the question in her eyes before she could ask it. She nodded, blinking back tears. "What now?" Buff turned back to the terminal, where new messages were appearing. "Now, we keep fighting. Grey Wolf's network isn't just about extraction. They're feeding us intel, helping us stay ahead of the manhunt." He pulled up a new file, his expression grim. "And we've got a new problem. Look at this." Reyes leaned in, her eyes narrowing as she read. "They're discrediting our leaks, calling it fake news, manipulated data." Buff nodded. "They're moving faster than we anticipated. We need to counter this." And fast he stood, stretching muscles cramped from hours at the terminal. "Get the team together. It's time for Phase 2. As Reyes left to gather the others, Buff took a moment to center himself. Their families were safe for now, but the real battle was just beginning. They had the truth on their side, but truth, he knew, was often the first casualty of war. The Antimatter Marines had started this fight. Now, they had to see it through. The safe house buzzed with tense energy as the team gathered around a holographic display. News feeds from across human space flickered by, each one more disheartening than the last. Rogue Marines' claims debunked, one headline blared. Military experts question authenticity of leaked documents, declared another. Lieutenant Sato's fingers danced across a datapad, her brow furrowed in concentration. "They're good," she muttered. "Really good. They've got so-called experts poking holes in our data, casting doubt on everything we've released." Stone slammed his fist on the table, causing the hologram to flicker. "Damn it, we risked everything to get this information out, and they're brushing it off like it's nothing." Buff raised a hand, silencing the growing murmurs of frustration. "We knew this wouldn't be easy. They have resources media control. But we have the truth. We just need to find a way to make it stick." McDermott, who had been quietly monitoring a separate channel, suddenly perked up. "Sir, I think I've got something. It's not much, but it's a start." He pulled up a message on the main display. It was from a low-ranking data analyst on a military satellite station. The message was cautious, probing, but clear in its intent. They had seen the leaked data and believed it. More importantly, they had access to corroborating information. "Can we trust this?" Reyes asked, her voice tinged with hope and suspicion in equal measure. Buff studied the message. His cybernetic eye might be gone, but years of experience let him read between the lines. "It's a risk, but one we might have to take. Sato, can you verify the source?" Sato was already working, her fingers a blur over the datapad. "It checks out, sir. The encryption is genuine military grade. If it's a trap, it's a sophisticated one." Buff nodded, making a decision. "All right, we make contact, but carefully. Stone, you and McDermott set up a secure comm line. Reyes, start compiling a list of potential allies based on this contact's profile. There might be others like them out there." As the team sprang into action, Buff pulled Sato aside. "I need you on something else," he said quietly. "If we're going to counter their discreditation campaign, we need irrefutable proof, something they can't spin or deny." Sato's eyes lit up with understanding. "The black box data from our last official mission. If we could get our hands on that." "Exactly," Buff nodded. "It's risky, but it could blow this whole thing wide open. Think you can hack it?" A sly smile spread across Sato's face. "Sir, with all due respect, I designed half the encryption protocols they're using. Give me 48 hours. As Sato set to work, Buff turned his attention back to the main room. The energy had shifted. There was a renewed sense of purpose in the air. Suddenly, an alert flashed across the main display. McDermott's eyes widened as he read it. "Sir, we've got movement on the underground chatter. There's another enhanced soldier trying to make contact. They want out." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They weren't alone. There were others out there, questioning, seeking the truth. Buff straightened, his voice filled with determination as he addressed his team. "All right, people, we've got a lot of work to do. Counter their lies, secure new evidence, and now we start bringing our people home." He looked at each member of his team, seeing the same fire in their eyes that he felt in his heart. They thought they could bury the truth. They thought they could silence us. But they forgot one thing. A grim smile played across his lips. "We're Antimatter Marines, and Marines never leave a man behind." As the team dispersed to their tasks, Buff couldn't shake a feeling of cautious optimism. They were still outgunned, still on the run. But for the first time since this whole ordeal began, it felt like the tide might be turning. The truth was out there, and they were going to make damn sure everyone heard it. The next few weeks were a blur of activity as the team worked tirelessly to establish their underground network. Their safe house, once a quiet refuge, now hummed with constant communication and planning. Buff stood at the center of operations, coordinating their growing web of contacts. A holographic map of human-controlled space floated before him, dotted with glowing points representing potential allies and safe houses. Another one Reyes called out, adding a new marker to the map. "Enhanced sniper from the 45th. Says he's been having doubts ever since he heard our leak." Buff nodded, his expression a mix of satisfaction and concern. "That makes 7 this week. We're going to need more extraction teams." Stone, who had been running point on the extractions, looked up from his work. "I've got some old Black Ops contacts setting up a few more routes. But Buff, we need to talk about reversing the enhancements. We can't keep promising these soldiers a way out if we can't deliver." Before Buff could respond, Sato burst into the room, her eyes wide with excitement. "I've got it," she exclaimed, holding up a data crystal. "The black box data from our last mission. It's all here, the unauthorized experiments, the manipulated parameters, everything." A cheer went up from the team. This was the irrefutable proof they had been searching for. As the excitement died down, McDermott spoke up, his voice hesitant. "Sir, about the enhancement reversals, I think I might have a lead." All eyes turned to the young Marine. McDermott swallowed hard before continuing. I've been in touch with Dr. Elena Rossi. She was part of the original Antimatter Marine Enhancement Program before she left under, let's say, questionable circumstances. Buff's eyes narrowed. Rossi? I remember her. Brilliant scientist, but she had some ethical concerns about the program. McDermott nodded. Exactly. She's been working underground, developing a way to safely remove the enhancements. She thinks she's close to a breakthrough, but she needs resources and test subjects. A heavy silence fell over the room as the implications sank in. They had the means to validate their claims and a potential way to free enhanced soldiers from the program, but both paths were fraught with danger. Buff took a deep breath, weighing their options. All right, here's what we're going to do. Sato, start disseminating that black box data through our secure channels. Stone, coordinate with your contacts to increase our extraction capacity. He turned to McDermott. Set up a secure meeting with Dr. Rossi. If she can do what she claims, it could change everything. As the team moved to carry out their orders, an alert flashed on the main screen. Reyes was the first to react, her face paling as she read the message. Sir, she said, her voice tight, we've got a problem. Proximan forces just hit one of our extraction routes. They're actively hunting enhanced soldiers now. The room fell silent once more, the weight of this new threat settling heavily on everyone's shoulders. Buff's jaw clenched as he processed this new information. They were expanding their operation, gaining momentum, but the risks were escalating just as quickly. We knew this wouldn't be easy, he said, his voice firm. But we're not backing down. Not now. Not ever. He looked at each member of his team, seeing the determination in their eyes. We're going to keep fighting. We're going to bring our people home. And we're going to show both Earth and the Proximans what Antimatter Marines are really made of. As the team returned to their tasks with renewed vigor, Buff turned back to the holographic map. The glowing points seemed to pulse with possibility, each one a life they could save, a truth they could unveil. The underground network was growing, a web of hope spreading across the stars, and at its center stood the Antimatter Marines, no longer bound by military chains, fighting for a cause greater than any they had known before. The road ahead was dangerous, but for the first time in a long while, it was also filled with promise. The mood in the safe house was tense as Buff called an emergency meeting. The team gathered around the holodeck, faces grim as they absorbed the latest intelligence. All right, people, Buff began, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. We've got a new problem. Proximan forces aren't just aware of our network, they're actively hunting enhanced soldiers. Sato pulled up a series of reports on the holodisplay. They hit 3 of our extraction routes in the past week. We lost contact with 2 teams and barely managed to reroute the 3rd. Stone's eyes narrowed as he studied the data. This isn't random. They're being too precise, too coordinated. Someone's feeding them information. Or something, McDermott interjected. All eyes turned to him as he continued, what if it's the enhancements themselves? We always knew they had tracking capabilities, but what if they're more sophisticated than we thought? A chill ran through the room as the implications sank in. Reyes voiced what they were all thinking. If that's true, every enhanced soldier we extract is a potential beacon leading the Proximans right to us. Buff nodded grimly, which makes Dr. Rossi's work even more critical. McDermott, what's the status on that meeting? Scheduled for 0600 tomorrow, sir. Secure location, triple encrypted channels. Good. In the meantime, we need to figure out why the Proximans are suddenly so interested in enhanced humans. Buff turned to Sato. Any intel on what they might be planning? Sato's fingers danced across her datapad. Nothing concrete, but I've been picking up chatter about something called Project Assimilation. Details are scarce, but it doesn't sound good. Just then, an urgent alert flashed across the main screen. Stone was the first to react, his face paling as he read the message. We've got an incoming transmission. It's from a Proximan ship. The room erupted into a flurry of activity. Sato immediately began running security protocols while Reyes and McDermott took up defensive positions. Buff raised a hand, silencing the commotion. Put it through. but keep it on a one-way channel. Let's see what they have to say. The holodisplay flickered, resolving into the alien visage of a Proximan commander. Its insectoid features were impossible to read, but its message was clear. Attention, renegade humans. We know of your efforts to subvert the enhanced soldier program. Know this: those you seek to save are already ours. Their bodies may be human, but their minds belong to the Proximan collective. Continue your interference, and you doom not only yourselves but all of humanity. The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving a stunned silence in its wake. Buff was the first to speak, his voice tight with controlled anger. Looks like we've gotten their attention. And now we know why they're so interested in enhanced soldiers. Mind control, Reyes whispered, horror evident in her voice. Is that even possible? With the level of neural integration in the enhancements? It's not outside the realm of possibility, Sato replied, her mind already racing through the implications. Stone slammed his fist on the table. We can't let this stand. If what they're saying is true, every enhanced soldier is a potential sleeper agent. Buff nodded, his resolve hardening. Agreed. This changes everything. We're not just fighting for the truth anymore, we're fighting for the very soul of humanity. He looked at each member of his team, seeing the same determination reflected in their eyes. We need to accelerate everything. Sato, I want every scrap of intel we have on this project assimilation. Stone, double our extraction efforts, but implement stricter security protocols. McDermott, tell Dr. Rossi we're moving up our timetable. As the team sprang into action, Buff turned back to the holodisplay, studying the map of their growing network. The glowing points that once represented hope now seemed fraught with danger. Every enhanced soldier they saved could be a ticking time bomb, a potential agent of the enemy. But they couldn't stop. The stakes were too high, the consequences of failure too devastating to contemplate. All right, Proximans, Buff muttered under his breath. You want a war? We'll give you one. The safe house hummed with renewed purpose as the Antimatter Marines prepared to face their greatest challenge yet. The fate of not just their comrades, but potentially all of humanity, now rested on their shoulders. And they were ready to fight with everything they had. The small cargo ship drifted silently through the asteroid belt, its systems running dark to avoid detection. Inside, Major Buff paced nervously, his eyes constantly flicking to the airlock. Relax, Sir Reyes said softly. Grey Wolf's network hasn't let us down yet. Before Buff could respond, there was a soft thud as another ship docked with theirs. The airlock cycled, and two figures stepped through. Buff's breath caught in his throat. Mom? Dad. The reunion was brief but emotional. As Buff embraced his parents, he saw similar scenes playing out across the ship. Sato was hugging her sister tightly, tears streaming down her face. McDermott was introducing his young nephew to Stone, the gruff veteran awkwardly patting the boy's head. But the joy was tempered by the reality of their situation. These reunions were stolen moments, precious and fleeting. We can't stay long, Buff's father said, his military training evident in his posture. But we needed to see you, to understand why. Buff nodded, leading his parents to a small briefing room. Over the next hour, he laid out everything: the corruption they'd uncovered, the Proximan threat, the fight they were now engaged in. When he finished, his mother reached out and squeezed his hand. We're proud of you, son. All of you. You're fighting the good fight. And you're not alone, his father added. There are others, in the military and out, who suspect something's wrong. They just needed someone to take the first step. As if on cue, Sato burst into the room, her eyes wide with excitement. Sir, you need to see this. She pulled up a holo display, showing a live news feed. On screen, a group of high-ranking military officers were addressing a press conference. Cannot in good conscience continue to deny these allegations, one admiral was saying. We are calling for a full, independent investigation into the Antimatter Marine program and all associated Black Ops projects. The room erupted in cheers. It was a breakthrough they'd been hoping for but hardly daring to expect. As the excitement died down, Buff's comm unit buzzed. It was McDermott. Sir, Dr. Rossi is ready. She says she's made a breakthrough in reversing the enhancements. Buff looked at his parents, torn between duty and the desire to spend more time with them. His father nodded in understanding. Go. Do what you need to do. We'll be here when this is all over. With one last embrace, Buff rejoined his team. As the family members were safely escorted back to their transport, the Antimatter Marines prepared for their next mission. All right, Team Buff said, his voice filled with renewed determination. Let's go meet Dr. Rossi and bring our people home. The cargo ship's engines flared to life, carrying them towards a rendezvous that could change everything. But as they traveled, none of them could shake the feeling that their enemies, both human and Proximan, wouldn't take this lying down. The war for the truth, and for the very future of humanity, was about to enter its most dangerous phase yet. But for the first time in a long while, the Antimatter Marines weren't fighting alone. As allies new and old rallied to their cause, the balance of power was slowly, but surely beginning to shift. The secret laboratory hummed with energy as Dr. Elena Rossi made final adjustments to her equipment. The Antimatter Marines watched intently, a mix of hope and apprehension on their faces. Are you sure this will work? Doc Stone asked, his gruff voice betraying a hint of vulnerability. Dr. Rossi looked up, her eyes sharp behind protective goggles. In theory, yes, but you'll be the first live subject, Mr. Stone. There are always risks. Buff placed a hand on Stone's shoulder. You don't have to do this. We can find another way. Stone shook his head. No, sir. I started this journey with you. I'm seeing it through. As Dr. Rossi began the procedure to reverse Stone's remaining enhancements, Sato's data pad pinged urgently. Her eyes widened as she read the incoming message. Sir, she said, her voice low and urgent. We've got a problem. Our deep cover source just sent an emergency transmission. They've uncovered evidence of direct collaboration between high-level military leaders and Proximan agents. The room fell silent, the gravity of this revelation sinking in. How deep does this go? Reyes asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Sato's fingers flew over her datapad. Deep. We're talking admirals, maybe even members of the Defense Council. If this is true, it explains how the Proximans have been staying one step ahead of us. Buff's mind raced, weighing their options. We need that evidence. It could validate everything we've been fighting for. There's more, Sato continued, her face grim. Our source says they're planning something big. Something called Operation Mindfall. They think it's connected to the Proximans' Project Assimilation. McDermott, who had been monitoring communications, suddenly straightened. Sir, we've got increased chatter on military channels. They know we're close to something. They're mobilizing to shut us down. Buff made a split-second decision. Sato, you and McDermott focus on extracting and verifying that evidence. Reyes, coordinate with our underground network. We need to be ready to move at a moment's notice. He turned to Dr. Rossi and Stone. How much longer? 10 minutes, Dr. Rossi replied, not looking up from her work. Maybe less. Make it 5, Buff ordered. We're about to be in the fight of our lives. The next few hours were a blur of activity. As Stone recovered from the reversal procedure, the team worked feverishly to secure the crucial evidence. Encrypted data packets flew back and forth across their secure network, each piece adding to the damning picture of corruption and alien collusion. Just as they were compiling the last of the data, alarms blared throughout the facility. Proximity alert, McDermott shouted. Multiple ships entering the system. Military signatures and Proximan. Buff's jaw clenched. They're here. Sato, tell me you've got everything. Sato nodded, holding up a small data crystal. It's all here. Troop movements, secret meetings, financial transactions. Enough to blow this conspiracy wide open. Then it's time to go, Buff said. He turned to Dr. Rossi. Doctor, I'm sorry, but we need to evacuate. Will you come with us? Dr. Rossi looked around her lab, years of work contained in these walls. Then she squared her shoulders. Yes, my work isn't finished, and you'll need me to continue the reversals. As they rushed to their escape ship, Buff couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the precipice of something monumental. They had the evidence that could change the course of the war, expose a conspiracy at the heart of Earth's military, and potentially save countless enhanced soldiers from Proximate control. But first, they had to survive the coming storm. As their ship broke atmosphere, enemy vessels in hot pursuit, Buff addressed his team. Whatever happens next, remember why we're fighting. For the truth, for our fellow soldiers, for humanity itself. We're Antimatter Marines, and we never back down from a fight. The ship's engines roared as they prepared to jump to hyperspace. Behind them, the combined forces of corrupt military leaders and Proximate invaders gave chase. The final battle for the truth was about to begin, and the fate of the galaxy hung in the balance. The Antimatter Marines ship shuddered under heavy fire as it weaved through an asteroid field, pursued by a mixed fleet of Earth military and Proximate vessels. Shields at 30%, McDermott called out, his hands flying over the controls. We can't take much more of this. Buff gritted his teeth, his mind racing. They needed a plan, and fast. Sato, how close are we to the nearest populated system? Sato checked the nav computer. Epsilon Eridani, sir. Heavily populated major communications hub. We could reach it in 2 jumps. Perfect, Buff nodded. Plot the course. We're going to make our stand there. As the ship prepared for the jump, Dr. Rossi approached Buff. Major, I've been thinking. The reversal process I used on Stone, we might be able to modify it, broadcast it on a wide frequency. Buff's eyes widened as he grasped her meaning. You're talking about a mass reversal, for all enhanced soldiers. Rossi nodded. It's risky, but if we can piggyback on Epsilon Eridani's comm network. Do it, Buff ordered. Reyes, help the doctor set it up. Stone, you're on weapons. Keep those guys off our tail. The next hour was chaos as the ship jumped in and out of hyperspace, barely staying ahead of their pursuers. As they approached Epsilon Eridani, Buff laid out the final plan. We'll broadcast the evidence and the reversal signal simultaneously, he explained. McDermott, I need you to hack into every channel, every screen in the system. Sato, you'll handle the data dump. Dr. Yu and Reyes focus on the reversal broadcast. Stone, manning the weapons, grinned grimly. And we'll give them one hell of a light show to keep them distracted. As they dropped out of hyperspace into the Epsilon Eridani system, all hell broke loose. Their pursuers were right behind them, weapons blazing, but the Antimatter Marines were ready. Stone's expert gunnery kept the enemy at bay while McDermott's hacking skills opened every communication channel in the system. Sato's fingers flew over her console, releasing the damning evidence to billions of viewers across human space. And then, as enemy ships closed in from all sides, Dr. Rossi activated the reversal broadcast. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, reports started flooding in. Enhanced soldiers across the fleet were collapsing, their cybernetic enhancements shutting down. Proximate ships suddenly found themselves without their mind-controlled human operators. On screens across the system, the truth of the conspiracy was laid bare for all to see. Corrupt officials, secret deals with the Proximans, the unethical treatment of enhanced soldiers, all of it exposed in undeniable detail. As the dust settled, the Antimatter Marines found themselves surrounded not by enemies, but by allies. Ships from the Epsilon Eridani Defense Fleet moved to protect them, responding to the outcry from their newly informed citizens. In the days that followed, the aftermath of their actions rippled across human space. Investigations were launched, corrupt officials arrested, and a full audit of the military's Black Ops programs was ordered. The war with the Proximans was far from over, but humanity was now fighting it with clear eyes and united purpose. As for the Antimatter Marines, they found themselves hailed not as traitors, but as heroes. Their fight for the truth had changed the course of history. In a quiet moment, as they watched the news reports of the ongoing fallout, Buff addressed his team. We did it, he said softly. But our work isn't done. There are still enhanced soldiers out there who need our help, still corrupt elements to root out. He looked at each of them, Sato, Reyes, McDermott, Stone, and Dr. Rossi, seeing the determination in their eyes. So I have to ask, are you with me? The response was unanimous and immediate. Always, sir. Buff nodded, a small smile on his face. Then let's get to work. We're not just Antimatter Marines anymore. We're the guardians of the truth, the protectors of those who can't protect themselves. As they turned to face the future, the team knew that while one chapter of their story had ended, another was just beginning. The galaxy was changing, and they would be at the forefront, ensuring that the sacrifices made and the truths uncovered would never be forgotten. The Antimatter Marines had been reborn, their mission clearer than ever, and whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, as the family they had become. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I hope you loved it. Please remember to subscribe if you did like it so you can see more videos like this, and please give us a like and a comment too. I'll see you in the next one.